What is going on, everybody? I am back today because someone either on YouTube or TikTok, I've already lost the comment because I'm horrible about keeping comments together, recommended that I check out this movie on Hulu called Rent-A-Pal. Didn't watch the trailer beforehand, just read the plot description, sounded really fascinating, and I decided to dive in and watch it. So today I will be discussing the film Rent-A-Pal. Rent-A-Pal is directed by John Stevenson. Set in 1990, a lonely bachelor named David searches for an escape from the day-to-day drudgery of caring for his aging mother. While seeking a partner through a video dating service, he discovers a strange VHS tape called Rent-A-Pal. Hosted by the charming and charismatic Andy, the tape offers him much-needed company, compassion, and friendship. But Andy's friendship comes at a cost, and David desperately struggles to afford the price of admission. So, as I said, one of you out there recommended this movie to me, and a lot of people that have been watching my videos for a while seem to really get my taste. So normally when they recommend a movie, I enjoy it, and I really enjoyed this movie. I thought that it had really great performances. I thought it had really great atmosphere. I do have a problem with the ending, which I'll talk a little bit about without getting into spoiler territory. But aside from that, I think it's a really well executed film. So as the plot description states, we're introduced to David, played by Landis Folkins, who he's living at home with his mother. His mother has dementia. She often forgets that he even lives there with her. She forgets that her husband is dead, and he spends all of his time caring for her and making sure that she's okay. He doesn't even have a job, that he just collects disability for her, and it's kind of enough for them to get by. And he's a part of this VHS dating service in the 90s where people record these VHS tapes, send them out, and kind of pick through them to find someone to date. And he has not been lucky with the service. People aren't picking him. When he's taking videos home, he hasn't really found anyone that he's clicked with, and he's just very lonely. And it's very early in the film. It's depressing to watch how just alone that he is as a person. And one day he's at the headquarters of the dating service, and he sees this VHS tape called Rent-A-Pal, and he takes it home and puts it in. And Rent-A-Pal, the character in it, is Andy, played by Wheaton, who introduces himself, says that he wants to be his friend, and it's one of those VHS tapes where they talk to you, there's like a dramatic pause so that you can say your thing, and there's like a programmed response. And very early on, David's character, he sees it and he thinks it's kind of stupid, but the lonelier he gets, he really starts playing into it and having conversations. Well, then it almost catches you off guard because it feels like Andy is actually responding to the things that David is saying. And so the film is kind of toying with you emotionally as to whether or not the tape is cognizant of what David is doing or if it's just all inside of his mind. And the film is him coping with his loneliness, having this tape introduced, and eventually getting to the point where he can go on a date and to see if he can navigate his life through those series of circumstances. And I think what the movie does really well is showing just how upsetting it is to deal with loneliness, to be isolated, to be alone. We live in a world, and this takes place in 1990, but I think that it's so indicative of our society now. We live in a society that we are so connected, whether that be through social media, anything on the internet, all the apps that we have at our disposal, to constantly be in communication with other people, to constantly talk to other people. And so many people in this world suffer from depression, they suffer from isolation and loneliness, and so many people are unempathetic towards other people's circumstances. And I think what the film does a really great job of conveying is David essentially giving up his whole life to take care of his mother and finding through sets of circumstances that his mother was not necessarily the best to him growing up, but because she is his mother, he feels some sort of responsibility to take care of her. And it's heartbreaking, but it's very true, and it's very indicative of what a lot of people live through when it comes to having parents with disabilities. And I think that reigns true through the entire runtime of the film and creates a very emotionally impactful viewing experience, because I think there's so much of David's character that people can attach themselves onto and really hurt for his character. And Landis Folkins, who plays David, gives a phenomenal performance in this film. He is really the star of the show. He does a really great job. Wheaton is great as Andy, the character in the video videotape, but I really think that Brian's performance is what holds this movie together. I think he's so fantastic, committed to the role, really incredible. And what I like about this movie is it's very bleak. The color palettes are very gross. It's dingy looking, but it hooks you in really early on. And our lead character's kind of descent, I want to call it a descent into insanity, but more of just like letting the loneliness consume him to the point where he is so desperate to have someone in his life that he's letting this VHS tape dictate his actions. And I think that, you know, that's the sad truth for a lot of people, is that we get so lonely that we let our brains kind of take over, where we could control that and we could fight against it, that we let that loneliness consume us. And I think that that was a really incredible thing that the filmmaker was able to convey. I thought it was really interesting when they introduce a love interest for David's character, and how she comes from a caregiving background, and that she understands what he's going through, that like just the change you see in him immediately, and that shift of finding someone who you can relate to. And I really love all those elements in this movie. And I think the psychological horror suspense elements of the VHS tape play in really well to the overall film. I think they do a really nice job cutting in things that are really unnatural and perfect moments that just leave you unsettled as a viewer, and I really appreciated that a lot. If I have a qualm with this movie, it's the third act. It almost gets too ridiculous, and I don't want to talk about it in spoiler territory, but it kind of goes in a direction that I feel like where throughout the film there's so much that throws a question in your head as a viewer. Is the stuff with the VHS tape really happening, or is it just David's loneliness and isolation? And I think the direction that they took it into is a much more kind of inflated, supernatural way that I didn't like a whole lot, because I feel like it took away a little bit from just how incredibly nuanced and beautiful the first entire part of the movie was. And it's not terrible, but I didn't really like the blow up of it all. I feel like it kind of took away from a lot of what I really loved about the movie. And I'm sure there's people out there that really like the way that it ended. But for me, I just kept seeing a way that like you could take it and make it just as impactful, but do it in a way that's not as absurd. And I'm all for absurdism in movies, but like the direction that it took towards the end was just, to me, it was a little unwarranted, and it was kind of out of left field, and I didn't love it. But I still think this movie is 100% worth watching because of everything that leads up to that point. And I think it's saying something really important, and it does so in a way that's really effective. And yeah, I just really enjoyed watching this movie. I think that it has great performances. The cinematography is great. The score is fantastic. Everything about it just works really well together. And if you have a Hulu subscription, you should definitely check this movie out. So have you seen Rent-A-Pal? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was really great up until the very end. I'm not the biggest fan of the third act, but I still think it's an enjoyable watch. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.